What's going on, traders, and welcome to this week's episode of the Weekly Watchlist. In the Weekly Watchlist, I do a technical analysis and give you some of my thoughts on the tickers here on the left. We have SPY, the Qs, and IWM that make up the broad market. After that, we look at Apple, Netflix, Tesla, Alibaba, Facebook, NVDA, ROKU, Microsoft, AMD, McDonald's, and Amazon. If you'd like to see me add anything to this list, let me know down below in the comments section, and we can certainly check it out in next week's video. With that, let's hop into the broad market. So we're starting off here on the SPY weekly chart, and what I want to sort of point out first of all is that our chances of a head and shoulders on the weekly chart developing have significantly decreased. We have shoulder 1, head, and potentially shoulder 2 over here, but now that we're sort of in line with our head level and significantly above our shoulder 1, the chances of that pattern playing out are decreased. If we zoom in, we see we had quite a bullish week. Essentially, it's just a pure green candle, and we're just sitting right below our all-time high at 293.94. Our high of this candle was 293.49, so only 50 cents away, just about. I think it's more than likely that that level is at least touched, and then from there, I think that our market potentially goes to 300 or just to come up and test this resistance trend line, which comes from drawing in our high here and the all-time high here. Again, that coincides almost with the $300 level, so that's a pretty good target, I'd say, on the break of the all-time high and continued momentum upwards. Once we get there, the tone may shift, seeing as we've been in a pure bull run ever since the bounce off the 200 weekly. So let's zoom into the daily. So zooming in here, you can see that our uptrend is still very much intact. We are still putting in higher lows and higher highs. One thing I would like to point out is we have these sort of areas of consolidation that are very, very clear. If we have sort of an area of consolidation there, the next one was a little bit longer and happened within this rectangle. And what we're seeing now is a similar pattern holding up. We have a rectangle of consolidation. And the next question is essentially whether or not we're going to stack another rectangle, but this time above the all-time high, consolidate above that, and then continue onwards up and away to 300. So that's what I'm sort of looking for. If we see these areas of consolidation continue to form, something similar to that in we consolidate, move higher, same thing. We do have a trend line we could draw in. We've probably been able to draw it in for quite some time now, but we have something like this from these lows. It could be even steeper if you drew it in from here to here. Not so much a fan of that though. The key areas on the chart right now that I'd like to see hold up as we go into next week, if we want to see these higher lows hold, we're looking for, I'd say, this level right around here is very key, right around 290.50. You can just see how much price action has happened around this level. Again, throughout this week, the highs consolidating right below it, finally breaking above. So 290.45, a very key area. After that, on the low side, we're looking at 286.63. That is a very key area as well. That is our previous all-time high that we found clear support on that weekly chart with the lower wick. And if you even wanted to call somewhere in this level 288.71, you could draw that level in as well. I'm not going to, just because I don't want to clutter up the chart, but this is certainly an area on the chart that you would like to see hold on the way down. So breaking it down into our sectors, XLF, the financial sector, clear uptrend, still intact, had quite a bullish week, hence why SPY continued onwards. Technology has just been absolutely running, very, very bullish. Again, just consolidating slightly, buying the dips. Buyers are still stepping up. We have a nice hammer here on Friday. Let's see if that momentum can carry into Monday and push up again towards our high here at 79.46. Very clear bullish action here. The healthcare sector got a very nice bounce off of this level we were talking about and the hammer here on last week's video. Again, this continued momentum combining with the financials and tech sector just really pushing the market higher. Biotech sort of mirroring the healthcare sector. Again, nice little bounce here, pushing the market higher. If we zoom into the VIX, you can see that our trend line is still coming into play. Got rejected right up here around 14 bucks, and then it has rolled over since. We're still in the grind zone below 15 and sort of above our lower range there, down around $9. So again, if we can continue to just stay in this range, more than likely the market sees 300. Moving on to the Qs here and essentially the NASDAQ. Again, with tech being so strong, we got the breakout to the upside of the wedge we had talked about. Critical that we broke to the upside and not the downside here, as the wedge pattern would have essentially rejected the price on the retest, but instead we found support on the retest of our resistance, which is a great thing. Again, coinciding with that hammer on XLK in SPY. So let's see if we can, again, carry that momentum and push up towards a new high. I could see the Qs essentially running to 195 up here. We are in sort of blue sky territories. There's not much price history in the past here. There's essentially none. So 195, the whole psychological dollar there. If that tends to break and there's just a huge move upwards in the market, 200 would be a good target on the Qs. IWM has been fighting back throughout the past week. We had sort of a downward reaction off of our resistance zone here. However, this week we've pushed right off our 50 SMA on the daily and just continued to hammer this resistance zone. That being said, with all these touches, it sort of looks like it's wanting to break out above this level. Because the reaction off the 50 SMA is bullish and we see bullish action pushing into this level instead of selling off of it hard, as we saw here. Maybe there's an attempt again to push through this level, and if we can get up through it, a good target for this one would be 162.82. That comes from previous price history. If we scrunch our chart up a little bit, you can see we had clear resistance around this area as well as support. So that would be a good target if we do get a breakthrough of this resistance zone. If we get a rollover, we're looking for our 250 SMAs to act as support. We're about to get a golden cross here, so not a 100% guaranteed buy signal, but some people do consider that a very good bullish signal. Alrighty, getting right into our companies now. Starting off with Apple here, you can see a very bullish pattern. We have these continued up moves, a point of resistance, some consolidation. Price breaks above that prior resistance, and we set a new high, and then consolidate some more, bounce off of our prior resistance there. So a very bullish pattern, especially combined with this candlestick here on Friday, finding nice support around 202.87. I wouldn't be surprised with earnings on Tuesday to see Apple end up around 215 by the end of the week. We might have a big gap up on Wednesday morning as earnings are after hours on Tuesday. So a potential for a big gap here on Apple, but I think things are very bullish, finding support here off of our prior high. Continuing, if we can break out through 208.54, I'd say 215 is more than likely in the sights for Apple. On the way down, supports are mapped out. We have 197.57, and then anything lower than that is sort of our key area of consolidation, right around 185.62. Netflix is sort of in a upwards channel now. We've gotten rid of our wedge because we've violated it so many times, and we're sort of right in the middle of the channel. If we scrunch this up a little bit, you can see we're smack dab in the middle. So a couple scenarios on Netflix, we could make a move to the upper end of the channel, find resistance a little bit earlier than getting there, right around 386.80. Again, we have this resistance point to keep in mind as well on the upside. If we see a move up here, again, look for a small pullback. Instead, if we see a rollover off of sort of the center of the channel here, and where we currently sit, we're looking for support to first come into play right around 365.42. I would just call it 365.50 based on the low of this candle and where we sort of bounce from short term. After that, we're looking at the 50 SMA on the daily chart down here around 362 just about, and then we're obviously targeting the lower end of the channel. If we get a full rollover and break down through those levels, that again is going to be continuing to move in the upwards direction as the week carries on. But if we give that up, again, this key support breaks, we're looking at 350 and then 342.18 based on the lows here and the lows here. Tesla got pretty nasty, falling out of our symmetrical triangle. I got rid of our support zone, but again, we sort of called this one as we sort of broke down below this level. It was because we were in a downtrend. It was pretty clear what was going to happen here on Tesla. Too volatile for my liking to actually play it, but again, just seeing how charts hold up is very cool. The next very key support on the chart is right around 180, I'd call it. Again, this comes from, if we go to the weekly chart, this level has acted as key support in the past. So we are quite a ways away from it. There's not really much in between here. There's some small nuanced levels, but we're just looking at the overall level there. Depending on how nasty Tesla gets, again, 180 just about, but again, we are pretty far away from that. That would be quite the dip on Tesla. I'd play the psychological numbers on the way down, potentially 225, 200, and then 175 if we don't quite get all the way down into this area here. BABA looks very similar to our IWM chart. We have so many touches and sort of taps on our resistance level here at 188.04. It's just sort of looking prime for a breakout above that level. If we can break out above it, I would target the $200 level, but some slight resistance coming into play before that at 198.21. That comes into place from some of our past resistance here. If we get a rollover and a negative reaction off of this zone throughout the course of the week, and we really see a rollover, things might get nasty as sellers realize that there's no real strength to push up through this level and pile on the shorts. That being said, looking for support to come into play around 183.11. Anything lower than that, we're looking at 176.74, and then so on and so forth to 171.86. Again, we could just continue in the downwards direction, but that's quite a ways away. I'd say the more likely scenario on BABA is a breakout through 188 and a continued move in the upwards direction towards that $200 level. Possibly look at 195 as psychological resistance on the way up as well. Facebook, we talked about our beautiful double bottom, and then it gapped up huge on earnings, so congrats if you were long above the 179.79 level. You're looking pretty good right now. We're finding some support down here around 188.30. Usually after big gap ups like this, price sort of just goes sideways for a bit, doesn't really choose a strong direction. You can see that sort of happens here. We had the big gap up last earnings, sort of went sideways for a little bit, dribbled downwards a little bit, and then continued to sort of find trend and find support. So again, look for this one to go sideways a little bit. No clear direction right off the bat on the gap, but if anything, if it holds on the gap, if we hold 185, that would be a bullish reaction to the gap essentially, and we would continue higher. Looking for $200 would be a nice target on the upside. Again, anything lower, our supports are mapped out for us. Checking in on NVDA here. I'm not sure what news drove this big gap down on Friday, but we got a gap down and found perfect support at our 50 SMA, putting in a nice big tail right around our support level at 174 as well. So perfect to see that super support hold up. That being said, this would indicate to me a continued move upwards in the next session. So Monday we might see a gap fill up to the lows, up to 183.07. If that happens, look for a gap fill reversal, so a small negative reaction to that in the intraday time frame. And then depending on how the week plays out, if we break back above and stay in between 183 and 193, that would be good for some consolidation and a continued move up. We never quite got the test of the $200 mark and the 200 SMA on the daily chart, so that could potentially still be in play. We do, like we said, want to see this level hold as support. If that falls, we're looking at 164.71 on the downside. Anything lower than that, pretty nasty move there on NVIDIA, but we have our descending resistance trend line that we could potentially backtest as support. ROKU, again, just sort of chopping around, no clear trends being established. Could call it a slight uptrend for now. We've gotten back above our support trend line, so that is a good thing. You can see it's holding up quite nicely. We broke out above our 50 SMA on the daily chart on Friday. That being said, we have some work to do to get all the way back up to sort of our resistance zone up top here, right around 68.10. That being said, there is some resistance sort of where we sit now. If you draw in a horizontal line, you can see how much price action there is right around this level. How many touches we had? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So we're sitting at a pretty key level here. If we get a breakout above it, I'd say 65 is a good target for an intraday move come early next week. If we get through that, move up to 68.10. On the downside, we're looking for our support trend line to come into play. Anything lower than that, we're looking for this set of lows to hold up. Anything lower than that, and we're really looking for this set of lows to offer support right around $55 on the downside. Anything lower than that is quite a nasty move for the week, but we do have 51 just about as support here, so keep that in mind on ROKU. So Microsoft already reported earnings. We had a big gap up, and this is why I think Apple could potentially do something very similar and get into that 215 level. Microsoft was in blue skies, so we saw a couple days of upwards action. Earnings came out, I'm assuming, post-market on Wednesday. Thursday, we got the huge gap up, and now it's just sort of consolidating, going sideways. Again, very similar to Facebook. If we just sort of go sideways, let the market digest this big move, that would be fine. If we fill the gap and hold the gap at 226 just about, that, again, would still be fine. Again, market does have to digest this big move. We'll sort of play that one for intraday moves. AMD is sort of similar to Netflix in a sense where it's in the middle of a channel. You can see our lower support zone, upper resistance zone. We're sort of dead in the middle. We are finding a bit of a hammer off of our support here. That being said, I could see AMD potentially coming up and testing our highs here at 28.88. We had a little bit of a double top there that day. So if we can come up and test that and then break out through it, I would look for $30 just about. If we get rejected here, again, looking for support to come into play at 28, whole dollar. Anything lower than that, we want to see this level hold up again, as it has once and twice here at 26.82 just about, maybe even 27. Just call it $27, the whole number, very close. So that's AMD. McDonald's has earnings coming up on Tuesday as well as Apple. So that being said, we are in blue sky territories. Again, this trend has been very strong in the upwards direction. I wouldn't be surprised to see a gap up. Again, it all comes down to the conference call and what they say. Could have great earnings and a negative reaction in the market. So again, play these earnings plays with caution. You could get smoked on them or you could make out big. So decide if that's a risk you want to take and then go with it. we're just sort of playing the whole numbers now that we're in blue skies. I'd say 200 is a good place for McDonald's to go. If it pulls back, I would like to see 195, sort of this level here. You can see the high of that candle is right around 195. If that holds as support, that would be looking good. Anything lower than that, we're at 193, 190, so on and so forth. But again, let's break out the fibs actually on this one just to see what might be in store for a pullback if we get a pullback. So we take the low to the high, and any sort of pullback into the 38.2, again, beautiful, lines up perfectly with this high. You can't make this stuff up. So any sort of pullback into this level would be buyable around 190, I would say. If we sort of get into the 50%, 61.8%, that's a little bit too much of a pullback on the move for it to be buyable, in my opinion. So keep that in mind if we get a continued pullback. If we get a gap down on earnings, it might be potentially buyable if it gets down into 190 for a longer term hold. But again, I think the reaction is going to be bullish, as we have been in quite a bullish uptrend since essentially for a while. So keep that in mind. And lastly, Amazon breaking out above our 1900 level that we talked about. So I guess after having not watched this one, seeing it for a week now, breaking out above our whole dollar there at 1900, big deal. Finding nice support off of it after we had a gap up. Prices got hammered. That was quite the day. Holy crap. The range on that day was what, $53. So would have been a great day to be day trading Amazon on Friday if you have the account size for it and the nerves for it. I think we head up and continue up to 2,000. 2,000 could be a likely target now that we've broken out of the upper end of our wedge. Again, if we reach 2,000 and the market continues to be bullish, I would say recent or all-time highs rather at 2050 could be more than likely. It depends on how the market feels as it approaches that $300 level on SPY. Again, Amazon being tech with the Qs, the NASDAQ, it might continue to just push up and continue higher right into our all-time high level. So keep 2,000 on the radar on the way up, and then our all-time high at 2050. Alrighty guys, that's going to wrap up this week's episode of the Weekly Watchlist. If you enjoyed it or learned something, leave the video a thumbs up. If you have any questions or comments, want to see me review any other tickers in next week's video, let me know down below in the comments section. And as always, subscribe for more of this content. I wish you a green trading week.